Hello and welcome back to another notes video. In this video, we're going to be talking about demographics. And some of you might know what demographics are, and some of you might have never heard this term before. So demographics are basically the statistical study of a population. So breaking down different numbers to kind of gauge some meaning out of it in a population. So some of the more common demographics are age, gender, occupation, income, family status, education, race, and there's tons of other ones, but that's mostly what people look at when they're breaking down a population. Demographics are super important because they allow you to measure certain factors in the population so that you kind of know what kind of changes you need to make in a community to help improve that community or help improve the government or help improve the company if you're using it in a business setting. So businesses, for example, use demographics to kind of figure out who their customers are. And you guys probably see this a lot with online stuff nowadays, like there's algorithms on your phone. So when you like Google something a lot, or if you even just talk about stuff around your phone, you'll start getting ads for certain things. That's a certain demographic. People are targeting you, companies are targeting you based on what you're interested in. Kind of creepy. And then governments also use demographics to kind of figure out how to allocate funds for programs and resources. So they might look at certain areas are more low income than others, so they might open certain programs in one area and not in another. So demographics are a good way to kind of figure out who is where and what we need in a certain area. They can be super useful in understanding all sorts of different things across communities. So demographics kind of play into developed versus developing countries. Sorry, I turned off my cameras because there's no room for me here. So determining if a country is developed or developing kind of ties into the economics and demographics of a country. To determine a country's status, developed versus developing, you look at the GDP per capita, and that's gross domestic product per capita, as well as the Human Development Index, which is something that was created to kind of help look past just the economic portion. So this is where the demographics comes into play. So the Human Development Index is a summary measure of average achievement in key dimensions of human development. So they look at a long and healthy life, so life expectancy basically, being knowledgeable and having a decent standard of living. So the knowledge aspect is they look at expected years of schooling versus mean years of schooling. So how many years are you expected to go to school versus how many years you actually go to school. And then a decent standard of living, they look at the gross national income per capita. So what is the average income for that area? So the GDP and the Human Development Index put together determines if you are a developed or developing country. So developed countries are more industrialized. They have higher per capita income levels, stable population growth, and consume lots of natural resources. And that's generally because in developed countries, more people drive cars, fly airplanes, use electricity and gas in their homes, things like that. Birth and death rates are stable in developed countries because infant mortality rates are low, and life expectancy in all developed countries is 70 plus years, so 70 years or higher. And then we don't have high birth rates in developed countries because we have quality medical care and high living standards here. We don't have high infant mortality rates, so we don't have to have a high number of children in order to make sure that some of them survive. No developed country has an infant mortality rate higher than 10 per 1,000 live births. So pretty good on the infant mortality. Also, in developed countries, we have more women in the workforce and we have higher levels of debt because nations with developing economies can't get the same kind of financing that more developed nations can. Like, nations are more likely to loan money out to people who are already developed than developing. Better return on their investment. Developing countries are less industrialized, they have lower per capita income levels, and they're often agriculturally based rather than industrialized. So more agriculture, less industry. Generally, they have high birth rates and high infant mortality rates, and that goes with the reasons I said in the previous slide. And then they also have less access to education, healthcare, and new technologies. So for your assignment for this one, you're going to be looking at different developed and developing countries to kind of see, compare and contrast the differences between them. And you're going to be looking at some of the demographics that go along with those different countries. That is it for this notes video. Thank you again for joining.